Welcome to You Can't Break Us, the podcast sharing real stories of parental alienation and family court injustice. I'm your host, Kaylin Hawkinson. Each episode, I sit down with brave guests who open up about their personal journeys, the pain, the resilience, and the fight for justice. These stories are raw, real, and powerful because speaking out is how we break the silence and remind the world, you can't break us. Hi, Shane. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you being here to share your story, and I love that we're bringing a different perspective here today, actually as an adoptee. And alienation happened along the way on multiple different levels, so I'd love to get into that and start from the beginning. How did you find out you were adopted, and where did it go from there?
Hi, Carlin. Yeah, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. Um, when they sat me down, my adopted mother sat me down on the bed and she said, you're adopted like a dog. And I had no comprehension or understanding what that really meant. So I was in a bit of a daze about it until I sort of grew into that. And I don't know whether her intention was to tell me early and sort of groom that aspect. I don't really know or comprehend, but based on on her own experience around adoption, and it influenced how how the dynamic in the relationship kind of fostered through and developed. So there was a heavy sense of denial with her own experience, losing her own son
Okay.
the same way. So yeah, it's just trying to remember everything, and my head's just like, um, I,
Right, because
I
that
really
was,
don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to lay the sense of blame because it's one of those things that we all kind of experienced in our own different ways, and everyone else sort of reacts in their own personal way. And whether they remain in denial about it or try to face it and resolve it, it's completely up to them. So this is the issue. I've decided to try to, obviously face all these particular issues face on, and coming out of the fog that creates other layers of confrontation in your relationships. So people who are also affected decide to not confront these things, who try to remain in denial. They're going to try and, hide or challenge subconsciously and to the detriment of your own relationships. So it's quite a hard one to sort of pass through and understand, because everything's so systemically ingrained. It's difficult to make sense of it all, or pass judgment. And really, yeah, that's the judgment thing. I believe is a reaction of trauma itself. And whether you're non-adopted or adopted, everyone does their own thing because everyone uses adoption as a crutch for their own personal or systemic gain in some fashion.
so you were 4, you said, when you found out, which is probably hard to understand what that even means yet at
Mm.
that age. So as you grew up and understood what it meant more that you were adopted, what maybe was the story you were told of why you were adopted, or any information you were given about biological family?
Oh, well, I was told that my mother was arty and creative, and I was told that my biological father was a musician and a guitar player, which actually turned out to be true. But as I mentioned before, there are certain things that are said to create divide and mistrust based on people's experience, and these come through as lies. And I was told that my biological mother was a drug addict and these kinds of things, and it's like it was purely to seed the intent to um, stop me from making contact, I believe.
Okay. So you I guess it was lies by the adoptive parents, or do you know if they were told that, or they actually believed that about
Well,
your
there was
biological
nothing
mother?
when I got my adoption papers in 2016. There was nothing really in there that said those things,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Um, so I I got my birth certificate in 2000 roughly, and of course, before the internet, nothing really happened. I tried searching, tried phoning phone
Yeah.
numbers, etc., and I couldn't really find her. It wasn't in 2016, and I actually found her through a Jigsaw Queensland here in Australia, and they made contact.
Okay.
Um, Interesting development recently. Birth deaths and marriages have just rolled back a 33-year. Don't know the exact details, but since the open adoption legislation changed, um, people were able to gain access to connecting information to their birth or biological families. And
Okay.
in the last month or so, the Queensland government have revoked that access, which has been
Oh.
in place for 33 years, without telling anyone,
Wow.
which is
Okay.
pretty sus.
Yeah.
If that was still in place, I probably wouldn't have found my birth mother.
Yeah. And when you did find your birth mother, so during this time, it sounds like your adoptive family did not want you to find your biological family. So when you did find your biological family, what happened from there?
Well, um, so even before that, I mean, um, going back a few years prior to that all happening, my son acquired a brain injury or uh, a brain tumor, and of course he had issues from that. And my adoptive family proceeded to blame myself and my ex-wife, said
Wow.
it was my fault. You know, he's sick because of you, blah blah blah. And
Wow.
I and we tried to get help for him, and we were getting the wrong answers from the wrong doctors, and it wasn't a year until he was actually diagnosed properly because he was having some pretty heavy issues, and we didn't know. We were just led up the garden path, and we were, and I was getting blamed for that.
Wow.
Anyway, the relationship started to sort of falter, even then, between my adoptive family and I, and there's just this heavy sense of just badgering and bad conduct, and just things started to feel wrong. And
Yeah.
um, so once 2016 came about, I'd had my birth certificate for a while, and contacted Jigsaw Queensland. They went through the electoral roll and cross-reference with maiden names with my birth mother's sister and Facebook, and made the connection and said they're 99% sure that this is it. Would you like to contact her? And I said, yes. And do you want to do that? Or do you want us to write a letter? And I sort of ummed and ahed and didn't really know what to do. I ended up writing a letter to her, and my now partner, Tracy, before we were married, we hand delivered that to her place, but she
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
actually there. She wasn't present. She wasn't actually at home. So
Okay.
we came back and we waited a couple of days, and then my birth mother contacted me on Facebook Messenger, uh, and we met that week.
Wow. How did that feel being reached out to from her and knowing you've found your birth mother?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like, it was one of the most, you know, impactful moments from my life. We
Yeah.
when we first met, we just sort of latched onto each other and didn't say a word and just cried for 20 minutes.
Wow.
You know,
That's so wonderful.
yeah, yeah. It's been amazing. It's been almost 10 years now since, and we're in regular contact every day. I'll message her. And living over here now in Bali, yeah, I'm a fair way away, but there's still aspects of the relationship that will never come back. you know, obviously. And we're aware of that. We do our best to acknowledge it all, and we're advocating in the right spaces and doing all the right
Yeah.
things, and but yeah, it's sad, but it's also happy. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. So when you did meet her, I'm assuming you heard her side of it, of how you were given up for adoption and what truly happened.
Well, yeah, I think again it's the societal expectation and the overreach of, you know, a combination of those things that created the environment, So it'll obviously government, religion, capitalism, classism, the whole box and dice fester together to make this thing that is called adoption, and society uses that as a bit of a crutch to feel good about itself because
So
they
it,
think it's an altruistic act, but it's actually not, because it's an act of denial, personal denial, because people don't want to take on the responsibility of actually dealing with the real problem, right?
so in this case, it sounds like the story you were told of your, biological mother being a
Mm,
druggie wasn't true, and
no,
really something happened where it was a systemic injustice that
yeah,
occurred that took you from your mother.
yeah. So in American terms, I guess you'd call it the baby scoop era. In Australia, it's the forced adoption era.
Okay.
Okay. And when you're talking forced adoption in Australia, it's quite common for people to make the misunderstanding that it was the stolen generation, which is an indigenous issue. And yes, it's similar, but it's exactly the same without race, obviously. And however,
Okay.
there are other members of that cohort that are also indigenous as well. So it's the lines are blurred, but it's almost identical and it isn't. And in that, there's a lot of governmental denial as well here, as far as advocacy and and um, and formal change in legislation. Yeah, we can't actually. Things are going backwards in Queensland. They're not progressing um,
Okay.
as you think they would. Yeah.
Did your biological mother share with you what happened at all, or
Yeah. So going back to her story, she was 19 when she had me, and um, she was from Bundaberg, hung around with people from Maryborough, so that's North
okay.
Queensland, sort of the start of the northern part of Queensland, and um, uh, obviously got together with my birth father, um, and when she was pregnant, I guess that was 2 years after her own father had left her own family.
Oh,
Apparently, he'd put $20 on the fridge, said, I'm leaving, and then went to Melbourne or Sydney with another woman 2 years
wow.
prior. So they were completely broke. They had no money at all to get you. So, as I said, it's a just a pure storm of coincidence.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And of course, the whole thing around religion and expectation and what people would think with the family having an unwed woman in the family having a child. It's like, ooh, you
Oh,
so it wasn't the done thing. So quietly, she was whisked away to um, Brisbane. She was actually it wasn't actually a mother's home. She was put into uh, a family home, and then she was tasked with nannying and looking after their particular children, right?
okay.
Um, Ironically, she wasn't well enough or equipped enough to look after me when she had me, but she was doing that job when she was there to give me up.
Yeah.
Just none of it makes sense
Yeah.
because it's the social expectation of the time, right? Which is a complete joke. And then we're told to be grateful for all this shit that happened to us. You know, it just none of it gels with me. Yeah.
So,
So
just so I understand and I'm following along correctly, did she willingly choose to have you be adopted, or was it kind of forced upon her
I
at the
think it was
time?
forced upon her. You can make the argument that she sort of succumbed to it, but there was heavy heavy coercion from many aspects within the family, from the government systems, from the hospital. You know,
Oh,
um,
wow. So
just a
even the
complete
hospital.
just a complete denial and a complete abandonment of her. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So a
Wow.
whole lineage is affected because of these things, you know, um,
Mm-hmm.
and and that ensues has its own levels of repetitive energy as well. So you know, when you're getting into sort of an esoteric kind of thing, things start to pull apart, and these energies start to do like their own thing and break apart. So part of my conscious efforts in my reunion now, and you know, spiritual beliefs is to try and liturgically speak these things back into fruition and understand and open myself to break the trauma open enough to openly experience what are these connections that I've missed out on without physically knowing them personally.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
How did you feel growing up in your adoptive family, since you mentioned that they were really actively trying to not have you ever reach out and find biological family? So, how did you feel like you were treated growing up? Did you feel different?
Yeah. Yeah, I did feel different. And I guess what happens is the dynamic in the family changes so much that they're trying to control you so much that you lose the aspect of growth to where you should have been, and you lose an understanding of yourself. So, and you grow to experience that as an expected denial of those aspects. So you don't grow into the person you were supposed to be, I guess you could say that. So I was very shy. I was very subservient, you know, did what I was told. And um, yeah, it's just, oh, you know, um, I grew up, you know, there was love there, right? Don't get me wrong. It was not all hate. Okay. And I'd appreciated what they had done for me. Um, but again, in their own issues, there was a level of denial there, and a subconscious level of expectation. You have to perform. You have to fill this role. You have to do it this way. Why are you doing that? Don't be like that. You're an idiot. And it started to get really, really uncomfortable over time. And you know, and when I started to try and question where do I fit this, particularly as an adult, you know, and things just started to really rip apart pretty quick. Um, and yeah,
I wonder why they didn't ever want you reaching out to find biological family. Again, I was adopted. I know we're in different countries and these are different times when I was adopted versus when you were adopted, and different
mm,
things happening at the time. So my situation was far different. Uh, I'm grateful I didn't have such a hard situation that you had in the outcome from it. But it is surprising just hearing that they were so against you meeting biological family at some point in time.
yeah,
Is,
I didn't know
is
that was their intent. You know what I mean? Because they'd always say, you know, I guess it wasn't really said about anything. It was just, I guess, I was always leaning up against something. I was always sort of, there was something there that I wasn't supposed to look at or address or there was this invisible kind of force field of pushing on,
Mm-hmm.
going, I want to go through here, let me express and explore these things. And it was part of the family of this I wasn't allowed to talk to, and I was met with this. It started to get aggressive, you know,
Okay.
and I don't know. It's it being like coming from a young age, being kind of groomed into it. It really messed me up, um,
Yeah.
psychologically, emotionally, and like after my reunion in 2016, um, basically cold turkey estrangement, right? Straight up
Wow.
for the last 10 years. And trying to, doing all the therapy and breaking down all the psychological patterns behind that from myself, but also understanding where they would have been coming from and why they did those things. You
Mm-hmm.
become a psychologist just in understanding that stuff you on your own bat. And
So it sounds like as a child, like growing up, you felt like this wall where you weren't really allowed to talk about being adopted or being curious about biological family. And
not
then when
really,
you, yeah, and that's
not
a
really.
part of you. So that's kind of shutting out a part of who you are. So that
Yeah.
does create confusion and trauma and,
So I do believe that my adopted mother got a copy of my records at some point because it was basically word for word, but it was a handwritten letter. And I can't remember exactly, but I do think she said that my mother actually wrote it, but she didn't,
oh,
which was a bit
okay.
weird. Can't remember the exact details. But it was pretty much word for word the exact thing in the the adoption papers that I got my hands on. Yeah, and yeah, obviously my father being guitarist, he's actually um, a music producer. He passed away last year in Nashville, and he had a lot to do with the Australian Nashville scene.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Did
so
you get a chance to have a relationship with him at all
no, I
before that?
found
Oh,
out who he
okay.
was, and I tried to make contact. Probably a year after I met my biological mother, and he denied contact. I tried to make contact a couple of times by phone, via jigsaw, via writing, and he denied everything basically.
Oh,
So
I'm
he knew I
sorry.
was
That's
around
sad.
for 8 years. He didn't know
Yeah.
I existed, and he knew I was there, but he didn't actually attempt to make contact at all. He was just in denial about it as well, because he was in
Okay.
his second family after his first marriage. I'd actually
Yeah.
met my half.
Okay.
I've actually met my half brother on his side,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and a year after we met, um, we both found out that we had a sister, and he had another relationship with another woman during his marriage,
Oh.
and she's probably 20 years younger than me, and 10 years younger than my brother.
Did you
So
end up meeting her as
yeah,
well?
I met her
Oh,
online,
wow.
so
Oh,
we
wow.
haven't met her face to face.
Okay, so you've gotten to meet a few members of
Yeah,
biological family now,
yes,
and
and I've
you've
also yeah, I've had a lot to do with my biological family on my mother's side. Met
hmm.
all children and cousins, aunties and uncles, and they're all amazing. And obviously brothers and sisters. I've got a brother and sister on my mother's side, so they know my story, and they were all very receptive and pretty cool about it. Again, there's still a fair bit of loss from my mum, and they're going to try to process that, and that's pretty heavy for them to do that. I do
Yeah.
believe our relationships kind of impacted their relationships as well. And yeah, that's a bit sad to see, but it is hard. And um, again, not being adopted versus being adopted, people carry their own expectation or beliefs around adoption, and trying to permeate those walls to create or improve the relationships. Particularly now living over here, I've got a bit of a distance barrier thing now happening. And I don't want to intrude. I don't want to force that grief in their face, because that's, we talk generally,
Yeah.
but birthdays, Christmas, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
but not. It's not anywhere near, I guess, what it should be or what I would like it to be. But it is what it is.
Yeah. So when you did meet your biological family, you mentioned earlier estrangement happened with your adoptive family. How did
Mm.
that happen? They were mad that you did make contact, or why did they end up alienating or estranging from you?
So I guess even before that, even before I'd actually met my birth mother, um, I just started a relationship with my now wife Tracy. This is after my divorce from my first wife, and any any female relationship was seen as an intrusion on behalf of my adoptive mother. So she
Oh,
was
okay.
aggressively protecting her territory, or whatever you want to call it, her state of mind.
Hmm.
And any female around me was never going to be good enough. She was protecting the the placeholder or the ideology of whatever that meant to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And yeah, it's kind of weird because and
So
she's
did
wrapped
she
up in,
feel replaced when you found your biological mother and she didn't
I
like
guess
that?
she was really threatened about that, yeah. And
Okay.
I get it. And this, of course, a lot of people who face infertility may feel this way. And I have a sneaky suspicion that my adoptive father may have been infertile. I really don't know. I'm putting the pieces together manually in my head, because he reacted quite abruptly as well to that. He I remember coming home on Christmas saying that I'd actually found her. This is who she is. I brought them some gifts. I brought my adopted mother some flowers. I brought my father a photo, and try to make a good impression of it all, and
Yeah.
open it up and crack that egg, right? And he was from the outset, he was probably the most aggressive with my adopted mother, was actually open to it. Let's talk about it.
Oh,
He just
okay.
shut the gate straight away. Boom, he was out.
Oh.
He was aggressive off the bat. Um, so yeah, it was hard, really, really hard. And it started to get, and the wall started to fall down pretty fast. Yeah, it got worse
So
and worse.
do you think
The
she took
dynamic,
after his lead then, since he was so abrupt, so against it, and you said she kind of sounded open to it at first, but
mm,
then clearly she eventually wasn't. Did she kind
no,
of just go with his side?
yeah. I mean, I do believe that they're both got their hands on it at some point, and or their own individual thing. But um, I really don't know. I can't get inside their heads. Like, um,
So you haven't really had a relationship with them anymore
no, not at
since.
all. Just
Well,
cold
that's
cut,
sad.
just complete
Yeah,
grey rock. So, like,
that's
I do
very
believe that
confusing.
there are heavy narcissistic tendencies based, like, that have surfaced based on her experience, and I get it. I understand why it might have happened, but that's pure denial on her part. And then, like, growing up, I was even later on through my first marriage, um, the level of financial coercion or control. I was threatened with, on numerous accounts. I've, I've got a checking account that's got receipts for everything you owe me. Education, cars, you know, all this sort of stuff. You know. So this level of
Okay.
expectation and like forced gratitude. You know,
Okay.
my
So it
ex-
sounds like
yeah,
so it
my
sounds like she had narcissistic traits
so
that have that
early,
you've
early.
realized.
Mm.
Okay.
And I'm walking on eggshells my whole life.
Yeah.
I remember walking through our house, in my teens, and she'd be in the kitchen. I have to walk through the hallway, through uh, our foyer area into the lounge room. We'll go watch TV, and she'd be on the phone 8 hours of the day, and
Oh
she
wow.
would be talking shit about somebody, trying to triangulate someone against someone. you know, and she was always trying to do the dirty on somebody,
Mm.
you know. So the behaviour was always there, even if it wasn't directed at me. I tend to
Yeah.
try to duck and hide and weave and dodge,
Yeah.
and that's the behaviours you learn, you know, when you're growing up. So yeah, it was always there. And of course, once I stuck my head up, I knew it was going to get chopped off.
Mm.
It was just inevitable.
Okay.
And I thought, well, let's get it over with. Let's go.
And
You know?
what happened from there? I know you had told me more alienation happened with your children or
Yeah.
other family
So
members.
eventually, obviously, I've just got isolated and estranged internally. So
Okay.
during my first divorce, my adopted mother wanted to pay the bills for the divorce, and I tried, obviously not make that happen. I was financially dependent at that time, and you know, tried to pay for some of the bills for that. And she said, I'm going to get blood out of the stone here. I'm going to make her pay for everything, right? So she hated my first wife. Always has done. But funnily enough, after the divorce has happened, and then I'm now with another woman, right? And I'm trying to stand up on my own 2 feet, trying to put some boundaries up to try to, not be so dependent on them. And they didn't like that at all. They wanted me to be dependent on them, right? This is
Okay.
the warmest aspect of them. So they want to control. So in that kind of thing, what happened is my adoptive family started to intrude between me and my children. And the way that they
Okay.
did that is they went back and they befriended my ex-wife. And then my
Okay.
ex-wife was obviously talking shit about me to my kids. And they've used that as a bit of an in, and they've put financial coercion there. They've obviously been offering money and services and other things to sweeten the pot and get in there and start to
Okay.
do what they do and say what they say. I'm not stupid, that happens. Now, of
So
course, now
did your
I,
ex-wife alienate you from your children, or was it your adoptive once your adoptive parents got involved, that's when
I
it
believe
started
it's probably
happening?
both. I believe
Both.
it's probably
Okay.
both. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Do you
yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Like, I really don't know because I'm not there. They're just talking shit behind my back, aren't
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like both sides ended up doing that in the end,
they?
but before your adoptive parents reached out to your ex-wife, was she already not allowing you to see your children or alienating you?
Oh, no, no. Custody arrangement were already in place by the court, and I was able to see them. They were staying with us every now and then, and yeah, it just sort of fell apart.
Okay.
And obviously facing the trauma after a union and trying to piece myself back together mentally. I mean, and my daughter came out one day and said, because I tried to speak to her about my adoption and my forced adoption, she's come out and blatantly said, I don't care. I don't want to know.
Oh wow. So somehow your own children don't care about your adoption
No, no,
story
not
or
at all.
finding biological family, which
I don't
makes
think,
it seem
yeah.
that
Yeah, my
that it was
son
put
doesn't
onto
really have
them.
the mental capacity to actually understand what's going on.
Okay.
But my daughter does and chooses not to.
And
So,
that makes us question then, for her to have that opinion probably was placed on her by the way they talk to her about it and knowing that your adoptive parents are very against it and knowing that they probably tell her those things for her to then get that opinion, it
yeah,
sounds like.
yeah, it's heavy. The more I've kind of researched it and done the deep dives into my own experience and understanding how people personally react to adoption, I'm seeing these heavy patterns over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's all the same stuff,
Well,
just in a
okay.
different, just in a different sort of
Yeah.
presentation. You know.
Yeah. Some different situations, different scenarios, but a lot of the same traits and characteristics
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. And everyone's acceptable to it in their own way, and I understand why they're doing it. I just wish they wouldn't. It's not right.
So it sounds like you mentioned earlier how it's backtracking with the laws,
Mm.
basically dealing with adoption. Is it due to like closed adoptions where it sounded like you said maybe you can't look up those records or like find
Well, not
out
anymore.
who?
Well, not in Queensland. So in the last month, they've they've rolled back that particular part of the access, which was open for the last 33 years. There was no
Okay.
consultation with the lead body, with the consultation groups, which they said that they were going to do, mind you. They were going to review the Adoption Act, which I don't think they have in the last 10 years. It's supposed to be, or 15 years. The Adoption Act is supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. They haven't even touched it for the last 15.
Okay.
We're looking at the possibility of getting a no fault, no fee discharge. So that would be an annulment in returns, I guess. And currently we have to actually go to the High Court, plead the case, dredge up the trauma, put all the paperwork in place, and pay a pretty penny. I'm assuming it would be probably close to 20 grand just to ask the
Huh.
question with the possibility of being denied. And
And
I guess now that this has happened, that's going to set back all those
yeah.
aspects as well.
So the goal really what you're wanting is that people have access to these records. If you're adopted, you should have access and know where you come from, be able to reach out to biological family,
Yep.
know that part of you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really it's a, it's a heavy denial. Whatever this is, it's not healthy, and I do believe people in families who are adopted, and also people in government, people of power, in institutions that have the power to deal with this stuff, have to do some pretty heavy soul searching and ask themselves, why are we doing this to people? Why are these things in place? Why are they hurting people so dramatically? And why do we expect people to live through this experience? It's not healthy at all.
Hmm.
You know?
And maybe just to be specific and clear, these are cases like your case, it sounds like your birth mother did not want it to be closed, like where you can't find out who she is or can't contact her. So essentially, that is what happens when it right now, where you
Mm,
can't access it. But,
mm.
on the flip side, we're not saying there aren't any cases where, obviously there are birth parents maybe who specifically choose that. And so we're not talking about those cases where they choose to have
Yeah.
it closed. We're talking about these
Look,
cases where
if
they're
someone
not
approaches you
choosing.
and you don't want contact, don't make contact. It's cool.
Right.
Do your own thing. But
Yeah.
don't have legislation there that blocks people from asking the question.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
cruel. You know?
Right.
Yeah,
We just want rights. You just want your rights there and not
pretty
to have it
much.
blocked
And
off.
I haven't honestly made up my mind whether I'll actually go for the annulment or the discharge. I really don't want. I don't know what I'll do, but I want that right to choose.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just you know again it's addressing the structure, the expectation that really, people say that adoption is for the child. Well, honestly, the way it's built, and you can see it really, really isn't at all. You know, across the board, state by state, country by country,
Do you
internationally.
do you believe it's a financial thing where, they get money, the system gets more money for it or something
That's
like
part of it.
that?
I guess that it is heavily entrenched in that in the states. Because there are some pretty heavy um, financial um, kind of things
Gains
that make
from it.
companies do what they do, and there's budgets there to keep it going, and financial incentives that make this stuff work the way that it works. Yeah, it could be spent in actually, family preservation, better mental health, better public education, you know.
Well, I'm glad you were able to still access yours to be able to find your biological family and that you have this great outcome of a great relationship with them. But sadly and unfortunately, it affected your adoptive family, which
Mm.
they, for some reason, chose to
Yeah,
do
I mean,
that. And that's very sad.
this is the thing. This is what I'm trying to express to people. The forced gratitude about adoption, it's not healthy. But I am grateful in my own way because, I'm not grateful for the adoption. I'm not grateful for being separated from my mother. I'm not grateful for forced adoption. Um, but what I'm grateful now is being able to be open to experience the truth of the situation and understand what really happened and
Yeah.
have an opportunity to educate myself and express myself spiritually and you know esoterically and being open to these energies and things like that my body was being denied and I was shutting myself out of, and it's just this crippling aspect of it all, right? That denies the child to grow anyway. That's the thing, but that's where the growth is. This is what people don't really understand what it does and what it can do to people. So yeah, but again, coming out of the fog in my instance, because everything's so heavily clouded in denial. Yes, I'm out of it, but at what cost? I've lost practically as a normal person. I've lost everything, but I've gained other things. But I can't really have a conversation to that in general terms because just in just public or personal discourse, nothing really lines up, and it's quite an odd situation to be in personally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people go, "Oh, you have kids? How old are they? How's your mum? How's your dad? You have grandchildren, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, I kind of do, but I don't really interact with them the way that you do.
Yeah.
And once I start calling it out and offer an understanding or a place of um, collaboration and communication where I'm supporting that person to come to me and talk about their understanding of adoption, they get a little bit, you know.
Mm. Having different views on it and then
Mm.
kind of a judgment on
Don't,
you,
don't judge me,
maybe
judge yourself.
knowing,
I've been through this shit. I know what's going on.
yeah.
You turn the mirror back on yourself. Don't look at me. This is all you. This is all. You've got the problem here. You need to do the inner work. It's okay. Here's here's the time and the space. I'll support you through the answers. It's okay. I'm not
So
gonna.
are there a lot of, I mean, it sounds like, and again, I don't know the percentage. I'm not the most knowledgeable on this, especially when my adoption, me being adopted, was a very different case. So I haven't really thought of this before. Are there a lot of forced adoptions then, it
Yeah.
sounds like, where you are?
So in
And
Australia, I believe there's around about 200 to 250,000 forced adoptions in that particular time frame. I think from
oh,
the
wow.
early, probably the late 40s to the early 80s, probably even further.
Okay. Wow. That's a
So
lot.
it's purely supply and demand again, and it's a mirror of what's happened in America through the baby skip era, I would say, and obviously in modern adoption in America with all the laws and regulations the way it is. Anyone who's looking at it with an open conscience knows it's not
And
sustainable.
yeah, and I know there are issues. I mean, I'm not, my case is my own story, and I'm thankful that I'm not this horror story of adoption. My birth mother, I have met my birth family as well, and I do know I was told the truth my whole life. I had access. My birth mother fully chose it, and it was amicable and a good situation. And my adoptive parents were always very open and honest and very, I'd say, encouraging. They never shut the idea down of finding birth family or talking
Yeah,
about birth family. So I had a very different
that's
situation,
cool.
and
That's
I
great.
can't imagine growing up having to shut that part out of
Mm,
yourself. and
Mm.
feel like you can't be that person, be who you are and show
Yeah.
that side.
So, see the early aspects of adoption and the way it was created through the laws and things like that. It's opened the door for coercion and manipulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's cool that you've had that experience. Where I believe is we need to move past what's called adoption and make it something else. So if we abolish adoption, but introduce another set of legislation internationally through the UN that says it has to be um, you know, stewardship, which replaces adoption, right? Same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? But uh, stewardship does not, like adoption, um, removes and changes your identity and replaces your birth certificate. Under what
Mm-hmm. Okay.
universe is that okay?
Right. Right.
Just don't do that.
And
Do
are
everything else.
these
Yeah, just
right?
don't do that.
Are these things you've told me, we haven't mentioned it yet on here, but you've published 2 books so far, and are these
Yeah.
topics you talk about in your books?
Yes. So I don't. I've written 4 books and I've written them kind of backwards from basically the experience of adoption itself, without actually referencing my direct experience. So it
Okay.
talks about how it makes the adoptee feel and that environment that you're in and how your body expresses all these internal feelings. And I walk
Okay.
the reader back through the books. I've released the 3rd book first, and I've released the 2nd book, and it breaks it apart, and it makes you look at these dynamics.
Okay.
And then the 3rd book, which is going to be my first book, will be my actual story, and I'll release that probably at the beginning of next year. And then the
Okay.
last book, number 4, will be the last book, and it's called The Bridge Walker. So if you look for the Bridgewalker series online. It'll pop
Okay.
up. It's on most digital platforms at the moment.
Great. Yeah, and I'll try and make sure and remember to put a link when I do publish your story here. So I'll put a link and attach it for it so people can find your
Excellent.
books. And it's the Bridge Walker series, you said.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
And is there anything else you'd like before we wrap up today? Anything knowledge you want to share more that we haven't touched on yet, or anything you really want to tell people before we leave?
Um, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I just want people to be open to discussing these things, because it
Yeah.
really, as it stands, we can do a whole lot more here, in that space, because we have to come away from what people think adoption is and understanding what it really, really is and what it really is doing. Because it doesn't have it's not having it's having the opposite effect of what you think it has. Even if you're a non-adopted, get out of your own head, listen to people who have experienced it. It's not all, rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
It's based on this predication and uh, poor social conditioning and all these other things, So things need to be changed so we can move forward, and so we can basically look forward and actually assist and help, young children in the same situation, so this stuff doesn't happen again,
Yeah.
or continue to happen.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that you're taking your own lived experience and you're sharing knowledge from it and trying to help the system help others and really make this an open conversation more commonly to be an open conversation with
Yeah.
people. And I
It's
I'm
nothing to
glad
be
that
ashamed of. Everyone has their own
right.
thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's just people have to sort of man up and deal with it, really. Stop denying it and deal with the real issues.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing everything you did today, and thank you for speaking out on something you're passionate about and sharing that knowledge with us today.
Thanks, Helen.
Um, to every listener, everyone following along, please look up his book. I will link it. And thank you so much for being here today, Shane. Thank you for listening to You Can't Break Us. If this episode spoke to you, Subscribe and leave a review. Every voice matters. Every story counts. If you or someone you know has a story to share, email youcan'tbreakuspodcast@gmail.com to connect with me. Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and never stop using your voice. Because no matter what they've tried to take from us, they can't